Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today we are discussing Peacemaker Season 2. Now, you guys might remember that I haven't really covered much DC stuff apart from I did cover Creature Commandos and of course Superman, but I'm not a big DC follower on the regular. So take that with a pinch of salt going into this episode. I don't know much about these characters comic book wise as I would with Marvel characters. I'm basing this solely on the show that I watched. And as well as that, of course, I only just recently watched Peacemaker Season 1. I hadn't watched the first one, and I actually had to go back and even watch The Suicide Squad because I hadn't watched that either. So, Peacemaker Season 2. First off, I want to say that I actually think the way that they're handling the DCEU to the DCU crossover is a little bit better than I first initially thought. So initially, it seemed very convoluted to me. It seemed very weird to do a multiverse storyline within the episode, within the storyline of the show, and then not do him crossing over to the DCU from the DCEU and just making that very straightforward and simple within the plot of the show. Now I get why they didn't do that. The Previously On at the beginning of this season is probably the most important Previously On that's ever been put out in at least a comic book show, if ever, in any show. And that's because, of course, they kind of basically go in and retcon those things that James Gunn has said that weren't relevant in, that aren't part of the DCU. As opposed to the DCEU. So you see, for example, the Justice Gang, where the Justice League were, and you see within that Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, Hawk Girl, and then apparently not part of the Justice Gang as yet, but Superman and Supergirl, which was very interesting, actually. So, yeah, so that was I actually quite liked it, and I even went so far as to add a different joke as to what the Flash and Aquaman had in the first season. They changed it to be Hawk Girl and Green Lantern, which was somewhat enjoyable in its own right, and especially because those characters become relevant in episode 1, which we will get to. But yeah, I think this is actually a lot better way of handling it than I initially thought, because what they've actually done is they've just slightly moved the goalposts. Basically, they've said, yep, and I know James Gunn had said this, but it's better to watch it, I think, because now you watch it and you say, yep, they've just moved it slightly to the left. Basically, if you want to think of it as the continuity happened exactly the same in season 1 up to the point of the Justice Gang appearing instead of League. And in this, so you could almost see it as you could see it as a parallel timeline if you wanted, but actually, really, what they've just said is this is how it's already happened. This is what happened. They're saying Previously On, and just basically gaslighting you as a show, in a sense, right? But what I find actually, and I think a few people have been saying on this online. I actually said it when I was watching it, that it's the most comic book thing ever. Sometimes retcons just happen. Sometimes things change, and sometimes for the better, right? And I think in this case it is for the better, actually. So props to James Gunn. I thought that was a silly, convoluted mess. It actually turned out to be very straightforward if you just watched the Previously On. Perfectly well done. In fact, I think some people probably who didn't pay too much attention to season 1 probably won't even bat an eyelid to them. They won't even realize. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that change. Otherwise, I think the idea of Peacemaker Season 2 is interesting. The fact that we're going into... that was one of my big questions from Season 1, and I only watched it recently, but my big question from Season 1 is, how did his dad blooming get these doors? How did his dad get this extra-dimensional, pocket dimension thing? And of course, that's so relevant now with Superman and what we know about that. So it's going to be interesting to see what that's about, how that happened, what's kind of come about through that, and obviously see these other universes within that as well. So that'll be interesting to see, interesting to work out what's going on there. And what I think is actually really interesting with this is James is going to set it up in a way that it's actually a dark mirror or a light mirror, depending on how you look at to Peacemaker. Because what's happening is Peacemaker's trying to be this better guy, right? And he's going into this world where he is a better guy. And not just that, his family were better people as well. Well, in terms of his brother actually survived into adulthood. So, it's actually a very interesting storyline, because what it is, yes, it's multiverse, but it's multiverse in a way that is more about the cerebrality of the characters. Does that make sense? I think it does, in that he is trying to find the good in himself, and he's going to manage to do that by seeing the good in that universe, and maybe get sucked too far in at first, but come out the other side being that hero that he intends to be. Right? Sorry. The hero that he intends to be, the hero that he wants to be, the hero that he goes to the Justice Gang and tries to be. He tells them about his life and what he's been, and how he has been having moral quandaries, and how he wants to change that. He wants to be the good guy, and he wants to help people. So that was very interesting to see. What I actually find very interesting about that scene is it paints Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and Max Lord in a very different light. Because don't get me wrong, I think they're definitely people who want to do good, but they're clearly not taking it seriously enough yet. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how the Justice Gang evolves into, assumedly, eventually, the Justice League, right? So that'll be really interesting to see what changes that makes them take it seriously. Because you have to remember that even this show is set after the Superman movie. She's just killed the president of, I forget the name of the country, but she's just killed the president like 6 months ago. So like, what's happening there? Like, like that'll be interesting to see. Like, what's the ramifications of that? So hopefully we see something that actually kind of builds on those characters in a way that makes them seem less flippant, because they've definitely been flippant up until this point. And I think that's why they didn't include Terrific in this, because Terrific is clearly not that type. Terrific is very much about, I want to help people, and even to the point of it going against his better judgment to help Superman and Lois in the movie. In Superman. So yeah, very interested to see how that all pans out. Obviously a lot of people are talking about the fact that we have a Batman villain included in this with is it White Rabbit? I think it's White Rabbit. And she comes out of the room before Peacemaker goes in for his interview, and she's crying her eyes out. And so people are obviously interested in that. Is there going to be like some kind of Batman teasers throughout this? I mean, this is not the first time this has happened. Of course, Clayface was in Creature Commandos, and of course is getting his own movie too. So I think we're building towards Batman. In I think what they're trying to do is they've brought in their powerhouse with Superman. I think they're going to really. I think they're doing sort of the opposite of what they did with Batman and Superman in a way, because like you have Batman and Superman, and then Wonder Woman comes in during that, right? I think it's going to be the opposite sort of here. I think you're going to have you've got your Superman movie. You're going to have a Wonder Woman kind of introduction, and then I think Batman's going to come in as this kind of like very important piece down the road. So we'll see how that plays out, and that'll be interesting to see. Of course, there's still a lot of discussion about whether it's going to be Pattinson or it's going to be a new guy. People still believe that it could still be Robert Pattinson. I personally would like that. I think his portrayal of the character is very good. I think it'll be a very interesting dichotomy to Corin Swift's Superman now that we've seen it. But if it doesn't, as long as they pick someone who is relatively similar to Corin Swift's age, because I think that's important to me. I think Superman and Batman are meant to be peers, right? And like I think you've got to kind of play them at the sort of similar age. Well, not necessarily. You could have Batman be a little bit older and kind of be more of a mentor figure potentially, but I think Superman, he shouldn't be like a younger than Superman scenario. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way, because we obviously know that he's probably going to have a child I believe they're going with Damien, right? So yeah, so we'll see how that pans out, but that'll be interesting as well. Now back to Peacemaker. Very interesting to see the arcs of these characters in the show. Going from the top, obviously, we've kind of talked about Peacemaker a little bit. Adebayo, what's going on with her? Obviously, it seems like her and is it Kia have broken up in some way. Is that something to do with a scenario out of the world, if that makes sense, out of the show? Could the actor not return, or is that actually a plot line that's going to continue throughout the show, and she's going to realize that maybe she's not wanting to do all this stuff and she's pushing herself too far, or what? We'll see. Harcourt, of course, is going through the storyline of really beating herself up about the fact she can't find work. And I think what the show is trying to do, by the way, is very much intimate that the universe that we're in, this is all going badly for these characters, and the universe that Peacemaker's going to, it's all going better. And I don't know how much that's going to overlap with all the other characters, but obviously definitely with Peacemaker. So that'll be interesting to see. But Harcourt, yeah, of course, she's going around, and I actually said when I was watching the episode, I said, oh, it feels like this is a little bit of a repeat. She's doing these bar brawls. But what's different this time is the last time it didn't feel like she was seeking them out. And this time it felt like that way. Like there was a flip in that fight where I was like, oh, okay. She's doing this because she wants... She does not. It's the toxic masculinity that's actually mentioned earlier in the episode. In a way, it's that she doesn't know how to deal with her anger, and so she wants to beat people up. So that's definitely part of that, and that's quite interesting in its own way, especially because we see the episode leave her beaten up, essentially. Then you've got... I can't remember how you say it. Economist. There we go, Economist. I don't know why that didn't come to me straight away. So Economist, of course, is working for Rick Flag, who I really don't like Rick Flag Sr. I'm not interested in his character one bit. Partly it's because I think I have a little bit of a frustration with Frank Grillo, because of his jaded approach to Marvel, and then with this show he was saying like he felt like he was a serious actor, so he didn't want to do the intro, which we will go back to. Actually, I'll remind myself to go back to talking about the intro. But I feel like he's taking himself a little too seriously in this, and personally, yeah, I don't gel with Frank Grillo. So I don't know if it's more I don't gel with Frank Grillo than Rick Flag Sr. as a character, but that's irrelevant to the point. That's just a personal peeve there. Yeah, so that said, Economist, I actually really like Economist as a character because I think he is so fundamentally different to the other characters in the show, but also fundamentally different to a lot of people we see in superhero media. And he's not the hero, so to speak. He's not even really, like, he's meant to be backroom support, but he's not even really that sometimes. He's not very supporting as a character. I see somewhat of like a character who is relatively, he's trying to skate by in this universe that's superhero-esque, and yeah, he's in Black Ops, but it feels like he doesn't want to be there half the time. And I kind of like that. It's very refreshing as a character. So it was really nice seeing that he's kind of even more shit this season, and how is he going to rise to that or deal with that? That's going to be interesting to see, interesting to find out, especially because in the trailers, I believe he's going to end up being paired with Judo Master, of course, who he basically nearly killed last season. So that'll be interesting to see as well. I've already said about Rick Flag, what my opinions on that. I'll be interested to see what happens with Keith and Augie from the other universe and see how that pans out. I think they're obviously going to find out at some point that Chris is not their Chris, and see how that works out for them. Do they accept him, or do they, turn on him, and does that end his ability to be alive in that universe, to live in that universe, should I say? But yeah, so obviously very interesting. James Gunn suggests that there's going to be more links to sort of Superman as well as other potential DC things upcoming within the show. Very interested to see about that. One thing I will say, there was the scene with the there was a very big naked scene in this episode, and I get squeamish talking about these little things a little bit, and you'll see why, because I'm going to explain. Now, I get there's many different tones within the DCU, and I get that everything's going to have a different rating, and I get that everything's like that. That's fine. Totally understand that. And, it's up to you parents to understand that just because this continues a little bit of Superman doesn't mean that it's the same maturity level as Superman. I felt that was somewhat egregious. I feel there's ways to imply those type of things happening without having just loads of naked people on screen. I just don't enjoy those scenes in shows in general, and so that's something that I personally really don't like. You can allude to something like that, and even like let's rephrase this. It's not the nakedness itself that's the problem. It's the act. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to be very coy, both for myself, my own sensibilities, so to speak, but also because obviously YouTube. But yeah, for me, I feel there's ways to imply those types of things, like post act or some other way. There's other ways of implying those things, a reference to those types of things without just slamming it in the show. There was a better version of that in season 1, I feel, when the Peacemaker and Vigilante, which I forgot to talk about. Vigilante, of course, is going to be relevant in the show. He didn't really do much in episode 1 that I can remember off the top of my head, but of course, interested to see where his character's going in this season. But yeah, so I think there's a better way of showing that when Peacemaker and Vigilante do the deed. I'm trying to think of the words. Do the deed with that wife from season 1. That was a much better way of portraying that thing happening by just having it be the aftermath. And let's move on now swiftly. One last point. I think this is this is actually something that was like my biggest gripe with this show. I loved the intro to season 1 of Peacemaker. I think it was so iconic and so like it amped you up for the show. The intro for season 2, don't like. I actually like the choreography, and I like that it's keeping the same style. The song choice really ruined it for me. I'll probably be skipping that every single episode, even though season 1, I skipped it a little bit a few times, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to listen to it this time. So it's a little bit of a downer, because I feel like I'm going into the episode and it's like, I understand there's like James Gunn picks songs based on, relevance to the plot. That's fine, but this time I think it was a miss for me personally. But yeah, so I think that's my take on Peacemaker season 2. Obviously, this is only 1 episode, but I think there's a lot to discuss about what's going on within that 1 episode and what's going on for the show going forward. But we'll see how that pans out, of course, in due course, and we'll probably come back to discuss the finale once we get there. So thank you guys for watching and listening. I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.